There is a quiet place within you that the world will never fully see, a place where your deepest thoughts rest, where your dreams take shape, and where your truth lives unfiltered. Yet too often, we open the doors of that sacred space too easily, letting in voices that do not understand its value. We confuse attention with care, presence with permission, and before we realize it, we have handed pieces of ourselves to people who never earned them. But what if I told you that not everyone is meant to know you deeply? What if protecting your inner world is not distance, but wisdom, and not rejection, but self-respect? Today, we are going to uncover the power of choosing who gets access to the most important parts of you. Your inner world is not something the world is entitled to. It is not a place for casual visitors, nor is it a stage for passing opinions. It is a sanctuary, quiet, delicate, and deeply personal, built from your experiences, your memories, your wounds, and your dreams. Yet somewhere along the way, many of us were taught to open that space too freely, to explain ourselves to be understood, to reveal ourselves to be accepted. And in doing so, we forgot that not everything within us is meant to be shared. There is a difference between being open and being unguarded. Openness is a strength. It allows connection, empathy, and love to grow. But being unguarded, giving everyone unrestricted access to your thoughts and emotions, can leave you exposed to misunderstanding, judgment, and even quiet harm. Not everyone who asks deserves an answer. Not everyone who listens is there to care. Some listen to respond, some listen to compare, and some listen only to take. When you begin to understand the value of your inner world, you start to treat it differently. You become more mindful of who you allow into your mental and emotional space. You realize that your peace is not something to gamble with. It becomes clear that protecting your thoughts, your healing, and your growth is not selfish. It is necessary, because every time you share something deeply personal with someone who cannot hold it with care, you risk diminishing its meaning within yourself. There is strength in silence, in choosing to keep certain parts of your life just for you. Not everything needs to be explained. Not everything needs to be validated by others to be real or important. Some of your most powerful growth will happen in private, in spaces where no outside voice can interrupt your becoming. And that privacy is not loneliness, it is protection. You must learn to recognize the difference between those who are genuinely present and those who are merely curious. Genuine people respect your boundaries without question. They do not demand access. They earn it through consistency, trust, and understanding. But those who feel entitled to your inner world often overlook the weight of what you carry. They may treat your vulnerability as something ordinary, something easy, something they can step in and out of without consequence. And so you must choose wisely. You must remind yourself that your inner world is not public property. It is sacred ground. Not everyone will understand it, and not everyone is meant to. And that is not a loss. It is a form of preservation. Because when you begin to honor the depth within you, you stop handing it out to those who cannot appreciate its value. In protecting your inner world, you are not closing yourself off from the world. You are simply ensuring that what is most meaningful within you remains safe, respected, and whole. And that choice, that quiet act of self-respect, is where your true power begins. Not everyone earns the right to know your story, because your story is not just a collection of events. It is a living, breathing part of you. It carries the weight of what you have survived, the lessons you have learned, and the quiet strength you built when no one was watching. And yet, there is a temptation to explain it all, to lay it out in the open, hoping that someone will finally understand you completely. But understanding is not guaranteed simply because you share, and not every listener is meant to hold what you reveal. There are people who will hear your story and honor it, who will sit with your words gently and never use them against you. But there are also those who will take your truth and reshape it, misunderstand it, or reduce it to something smaller than it really is. And when that happens, it can feel like a part of you has been mishandled. This is why access must be earned, not freely given. Trust is not built in a moment. It is revealed over time through consistency, through respect, through the quiet proof that someone values your vulnerability. You do not owe your story to curiosity. You do not owe it to people who appear only when it benefits them, or who ask questions without offering care in return. Your story is not something to satisfy passing interest. It is something sacred, something that deserves to be shared in spaces where it will be received with understanding, not judgment. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is to simply say less, to hold your story close until you are certain it will be treated with the respect it deserves. There is also a kind of power in allowing your story to belong to you first. Before it is explained, before it is spoken, it must be understood by you. When you keep parts of your journey private, you give yourself the space to process, to grow, and to heal without outside interference. Not every chapter needs an audience. Not every experience needs validation from others to be meaningful. Some of the most important parts of your life will never be fully seen by anyone else, and that does not make them any less real or valuable. As you move forward, you begin to notice the difference between those who seek connection and those who seek information. One comes with patience, the other with urgency. One respects silence, the other tries to fill it. And in that difference, you will find your answer. You will learn that earning the right to know your story is not about how long someone has been around, but about how deeply they have shown they can be trusted with what matters most. So take your time. Let people reveal themselves before you reveal everything about yourself. Allow trust to grow naturally without forcing it into existence. Because your story deserves more than quick attention. It deserves care, respect, and sincerity. And when you begin to treat it that way, you protect not just your past, but your peace in the present. Energy is currency, whether you choose to see it or not. Every thought you entertain, every conversation you engage in, every person you allow into your space, each of these requires a piece of you. And just like money, once it is spent, it does not always return in the same condition. Yet, so often, we give our energy freely, without pause, without question, without asking if what we are investing in is truly worthy of the cost. You wake up each day with a limited reserve. It may not be something you can hold in your hands, but you feel it in your body, in your mind, in your spirit. And throughout the day, that reserve is slowly exchanged through stress, through worry, through interactions that either lift you or quietly drain you. The problem is not that energy is spent. The problem is that it is often spent carelessly on people and situations that give nothing back but exhaustion. There are conversations that leave you feeling lighter, clearer, more grounded. And then there are those that leave you questioning yourself, replaying words, carrying a heaviness you did not have before. Both require energy, but only one gives something in return. The wisdom lies in learning to recognize the difference. Not everything that asks for your attention deserves your response. Not everyone who seeks your presence deserves your time. You must begin to notice where your energy goes, because it quietly shapes the quality of your life. If you are constantly pouring into spaces that deplete you, you will find yourself running on empty, wondering why you feel so tired, so disconnected, so far from yourself. But when you become intentional, when you start choosing where your energy flows, you begin to take your power back. Spending your energy wisely does not mean withdrawing from the world. It means showing up with awareness. It means understanding that your attention is valuable, your presence is meaningful, and your emotional investment is not something to hand out without thought. You can still be kind without overextending yourself. You can still be supportive without carrying what does not belong to you. There is also strength in stepping away, in choosing silence over reaction, distance over discomfort, peace over unnecessary conflict. Not every situation requires your involvement. Not every problem is yours to solve. And sometimes, the most powerful decision you can make is to conserve your energy for what truly matters, for your growth, your healing, your purpose. When you begin to treat your energy like the precious resource it is, your life starts to shift. You become more present in the moments that matter. You feel more aligned with yourself, and you stop chasing validation or approval from places that only drain you. Instead, you invest in what nourishes you, what strengthens you, what helps you become more of who you are meant to be. Because at the end of it all, your energy shapes your experience. And when you learn to spend it wisely, you are not just protecting your peace, you are building a life that reflects your true worth. Protect your peace like it is your last refuge, because there will be moments in life when everything else feels uncertain. The world can shift without warning, people can change without explanation, and situations can unfold in ways you never expected. In those moments, your peace becomes more than comfort. It becomes your anchor. It is the quiet strength that keeps you steady when everything around you feels unsteady. But peace is not something you find once and keep forever. It is something you must choose again and again, especially when it is most difficult. There will be times when your emotions urge you to react, to argue, to prove a point, to hold on to what is already disturbing your spirit. And yet, protecting your peace often means doing the opposite. It means stepping back when everything in you wants to step forward. It means letting go when holding on feels easier. It means choosing calm even when chaos tries to pull you in. There is a cost to everything you allow into your life. Every argument you entertain, every negativity you absorb, every situation you refuse to walk away from, it all leaves a mark. And over time, those marks can build into a weight that quietly steals your clarity and your joy. This is why guarding your peace requires discipline. It asks you to be mindful, not just of what is happening around you, but of how much of it you are allowing to stay within you. Sometimes protecting your peace will look like silence. Not the silence of weakness, but the silence of wisdom, the understanding that not every battle deserves your voice. Other times, it will look like distance, like choosing to step away from people or places that no longer align with who you are becoming. And there will be moments when it looks like a firm decision, a boundary that you hold even when it is uncomfortable, even when it disappoints others. It is important to remember that peace does not mean the absence of problems. Life will still challenge you, there will still be difficulties, disagreements, and unexpected turns. But when your peace is protected, those challenges do not consume you. They pass through your life without taking control of it. You respond instead of reacting. You remain grounded instead of being shaken. Not everyone will understand this version of you. Some may see your calmness as distance, your boundaries as rejection, your silence as indifference, but their interpretation does not define your intention. You are not responsible for making others comfortable at the expense of your well-being. You are responsible for taking care of the space within you. And the more you protect your peace, the more you will realize how powerful it truly is. It sharpens your focus, strengthens your decisions, and allows you to move through life with a sense of clarity that cannot be easily disturbed. It becomes a quiet confidence, a steady presence that does not need to be announced. Because in the end, your peace is not just something you experience, it is something you build, something you defend, and something you carry with you wherever you go. And when you treat it like your last refuge, you begin to understand that it was never something fragile. It was always your greatest strength. Some people will enter your life not with the intention to understand you, but with the quiet habit of taking from you. They will come close enough to feel your warmth, to benefit from your kindness, to draw from your energy, but never close enough to truly see you. And at first, it may not be obvious. Their presence may feel familiar, even comforting. Their words may sound supportive. But over time, you begin to notice a pattern, a subtle imbalance, where you are constantly giving and they are simply receiving. These are the connections that leave you feeling drained rather than fulfilled. You may find yourself explaining more, offering more, trying harder to be seen or appreciated, and yet no matter how much you give, there is always a quiet emptiness that follows. That is because understanding requires effort, presence, and care. It asks a person to listen without judgment, to hold space without turning everything back to themselves. And not everyone is willing to do that work. Some people are drawn to your light, but not committed to respecting its source. They admire your strength, but do not take the time to understand what it cost you. They hear your words, but they do not truly listen. Instead, they filter everything through their own needs, their own perspectives, their own desires, and in doing so, they take pieces of you without ever acknowledging their value. It becomes important then to recognize the difference between being appreciated and being used. Appreciation feels balanced, it feels mutual. There is a sense of exchange, of respect, of genuine connection. But being used often feels one-sided. It leaves you questioning yourself, wondering why your efforts never seem to be enough, why your presence feels taken for granted. And the truth is, it was never about you not being enough. It was about them not being capable of understanding. You cannot force someone to see you deeply. You cannot give enough to make someone value what they were never prepared to respect. And the more you try, the more you risk losing yourself in the process. This is why awareness matters. It allows you to step back, to observe not just what people say, but how they show up. It helps you notice who listens with intention and who only speaks when it serves them. There is strength in choosing not to give endlessly, in deciding that your time, your energy, and your inner world are not resources for others to take without care. This does not mean closing yourself off or becoming hardened. It means becoming discerning. It means understanding that your openness should be met with the same sincerity, not taken advantage of. And when you begin to make that distinction, you reclaim something important. You stop pouring into spaces that cannot hold you. You stop offering parts of yourself to those who only know how to take. Instead, you begin to surround yourself with people who meet you with presence, who value your depth, who understand that connection is not about consumption, it is about respect. Because the truth is, you deserve to be understood, not just accessed. And once you realize that, you will no longer confuse someone's interest in you with their capacity to truly care. Silence is often misunderstood. Many see it as weakness, as an absence of response, as something that needs to be filled quickly before it becomes uncomfortable. But silence, when chosen with intention, carries a strength that words often cannot hold. It is not always about having nothing to say. It is about knowing when something is not worth saying. It is about recognizing that not every situation deserves your voice, and not every person deserves access to your thoughts. There are moments when speaking feels necessary, when you want to explain yourself, defend your position, or correct what has been misunderstood. And yet, not every misunderstanding requires clarity. Not every accusation deserves a response. Sometimes the more you speak, the more you give away, not just your words, but your energy, your peace, and your focus. Silence in those moments becomes a form of protection. It shields you from being pulled into conversations that lead nowhere but exhaustion. Silence also creates space, space to observe, to understand, to see things as they truly are. When you are not rushing to respond, you begin to notice more. You hear what people are really saying, not just through their words, but through their tone, their actions, their consistency. You begin to recognize patterns that would have been missed if you had been too busy trying to explain yourself. In that stillness, clarity finds you without force. There is also dignity in silence. It allows you to walk away from situations without lowering yourself to unnecessary conflict. It keeps you from saying things in moments of emotion that you may later regret. It gives you control, not over others, but over yourself. And that kind of control is powerful because it is rooted in awareness rather than reaction. This does not mean silence should replace your voice entirely. There are times when speaking is necessary, when your truth needs to be heard, when boundaries must be clearly expressed. But even then, silence teaches you how to choose your words carefully. It reminds you that your voice has value, and because it has value, it should not be used carelessly or in places where it will not be respected. Sometimes silence is the answer to disrespect. Sometimes it is the response to negativity. And sometimes it is simply a way of preserving your inner world from unnecessary exposure. You do not have to respond to everything that reaches you. You do not have to engage with every opinion, every criticism, every attempt to pull you into something that disturbs your peace. There will be people who misunderstand your silence. They may interpret it as indifference, as weakness, or as avoidance. But their interpretation does not change its purpose. Your silence is not for them, it is for you. It is a boundary that does not need to be announced, a decision that does not require explanation. And when you begin to embrace silence in this way, you will notice a shift. You will feel less overwhelmed, less reactive, more grounded in yourself. You will realize that you do not need to prove your worth through constant explanation or defense. Because sometimes the strongest statement you can make is the one you choose not to say at all. Growth is a quiet, often uncomfortable process, and one of its hardest truths is that not everyone can come with you. As you begin to understand yourself more deeply, as your values become clearer and your boundaries stronger, you may start to notice that certain connections no longer feel the same. Conversations that once felt easy may now feel heavy. Spaces that once felt familiar may begin to feel limiting. And it is in these moments that you are faced with a difficult realization. Growth sometimes requires distance. This distance is not always about conflict or disagreement. Sometimes it simply comes from moving in different directions. You begin to seek peace where there was once chaos, depth where there was once surface, meaning where there was once comfort. And not everyone is ready or willing to meet you there. Holding on to those connections out of habit or history can quietly slow your progress, not because those people are bad, but because they are no longer aligned with who you are becoming. There is a natural resistance to creating distance, especially when it involves people who have been part of your life for a long time. You may feel guilt, obligation, or even fear of being misunderstood. You may wonder if you are changing too much, if you are leaving people behind, if you are somehow doing something wrong. But growth is not about staying the same to keep others comfortable. It is about becoming more of who you truly are, even if that means outgrowing certain environments and relationships. Distance does not always have to be loud or dramatic. It does not require confrontation or explanation in every case. Sometimes it is as simple as choosing differently, spending less time in spaces that drain you, sharing less with those who do not understand you, and redirecting your energy toward what supports your growth. It is a quiet shift, but a powerful one, because it allows you to create room for something new. When you create that space, you begin to notice the difference. You feel lighter, clearer, more in tune with yourself. The noise that once surrounded you starts to fade, and in that silence, you begin to hear your own voice more clearly. You start making decisions that reflect your values, not just your circumstances. And slowly you begin to build a life that feels more aligned, more intentional, more true to who you are. It is also important to understand that distance is not always permanent. Some people may grow in their own time and paths may cross again in a healthier way. But for now, the distance serves a purpose. It protects your progress. It gives you the freedom to evolve without being pulled back into patterns that no longer serve you. There will always be those who do not understand your need for space. They may see it as rejection or change in a negative sense. But growth often looks like change from the outside, even when it feels like alignment from within. You are not responsible for making your evolution comfortable for everyone else. In the end, choosing distance is not about losing people, it is about finding yourself. It is about recognizing that your journey requires space to unfold, and that not every presence in your life is meant to stay through every stage. And when you accept that, you give yourself permission to grow without hesitation, without guilt, and without looking back. Love is often misunderstood as total access, as if to care for someone means to open every part of yourself without limits, without hesitation, without protection. But real love does not require self-abandonment. It does not ask you to erase your boundaries, silence your intuition, or surrender the quiet spaces within you that make you who you are. In truth, the deepest form of love can exist alongside privacy, alongside distance in certain places, alongside a gentle but firm sense of, this part of me remains mine. There is a difference between loving someone and giving them unrestricted access to your inner world. Love can be present, warm, and genuine without requiring complete exposure. You can care for someone deeply and still choose what you share, when you share it, and how much of yourself you allow them to hold. This is not dishonesty, it is wisdom. Because not every emotion, every thought, every memory is meant to be placed in someone else's hands. Your soul is not something to be handed over completely to anyone who shows affection or interest. It is layered, complex, and deeply personal. There are parts of you that are still healing, parts that are still forming, parts that are still learning how to exist in peace. And those parts deserve protection, not exposure to every passing relationship or emotional connection. When you give too much access too quickly, you risk allowing people to shape you in ways you did not choose, or to misunderstand you in ways that leave lasting marks. Healthy love understands this. It respects boundaries without taking them personally. It does not demand full emotional transparency as proof of loyalty or care. Instead, it allows trust to grow naturally over time through consistency and respect. It understands that closeness is not measured by how much you reveal, but by how safely you can exist in someone's presence without feeling pressured to perform or expose more than you are ready to give. You can love someone and still say, "This is where I stop." You can care for them and still choose silence over explanation when something feels too fragile to share. You can be present in their life without making every corner of your inner world available for interpretation or judgment. And in doing so, you do not weaken the connection, you strengthen your sense of self within it. Because when you give unrestricted access too easily, you often lose the ability to distinguish between what belongs to you and what has been influenced by others. You start adjusting yourself to maintain connection, shaping your thoughts to avoid discomfort, softening your truth to prevent misunderstanding. Over time, this can blur the line between love and self-neglect. True emotional maturity comes when you realize that access is not a requirement for love. You do not have to be fully known to be deeply cared for, and you do not have to be fully exposed to be genuinely connected. Some of the most meaningful relationships exist with a sense of healthy mystery, where understanding grows gradually and respect is never rushed, and so you learn to love differently, more consciously, more intentionally. You love without dissolving yourself into others. You love without handing over every hidden part of your being. You love while still keeping certain spaces sacred, untouched, and protected. Because in the end, the strongest kind of love is not the one that consumes you. It is the one that allows you to remain whole. There comes a moment in life when you realize that choosing yourself is not an act of selfishness, but an act of survival. It is the moment you stop apologizing for protecting your time, your energy, your peace, and your emotional well-being. It is the moment you understand that if you constantly abandon yourself to meet the needs, expectations, and demands of others, there will eventually be nothing of you left to give. For so long, many people are taught to put others first without question, to be available even when they are exhausted, to say yes even when everything within them is asking for no. And slowly, without even noticing it, they begin to drift away from themselves. They become more aware of what others need, what others feel, what others expect, while becoming less familiar with their own inner voice. Choosing yourself, then, is not a rejection of others. It is a return to yourself. It is not always easy, because choosing yourself will sometimes disappoint people who are used to your constant availability. It may disturb relationships built on imbalance, where your silence feels like loss to those who benefited from your overgiving. But discomfort is not always a sign of wrongdoing. Sometimes it is simply the result of change, of you no longer abandoning yourself to maintain comfort for others. There is a quiet strength in saying no without guilt, in stepping back without explanation, in refusing to overextend yourself just to be accepted or understood. When you choose yourself, you begin to notice who truly respects you and who only values you when you are sacrificing your own needs. That clarity, although sometimes painful, is necessary for growth. Choosing yourself means recognizing that your emotions matter just as much as anyone else's. Your rest is important. Your boundaries are valid. Your healing deserves space. You do not have to wait until you are completely drained to justify taking a step back. You are allowed to pause before you break. You are allowed to protect your peace before it is disturbed. You are allowed to prioritize your well-being without offering long explanations. It also means releasing the belief that love requires self-neglect. Real love, whether from others or from yourself, does not demand that you lose your identity in order to maintain it. You can care deeply without sacrificing your stability. You can be kind without being available at all times. You can support others without carrying what is not yours to carry. When you begin to choose yourself consistently, something begins to shift within you. You start to feel more grounded, more clear, more aligned with your own truth. The noise of external expectations becomes less overwhelming, and your decisions start coming from a place of awareness rather than obligation. You no longer move through life trying to earn approval at the cost of your own well-being. And over time, you realize that choosing yourself does not shrink your life, it strengthens it. It filters your relationships, deepens your self-respect, and creates space for a more authentic way of living. You stop living as an extension of everyone else's needs and begin living as a complete person in your own right. Because in the end, choosing yourself is not about isolation or rejection. It is about remembering that you are also someone who deserves care, attention, and protection. And the moment you truly understand that, you stop asking whether it is selfish and start realizing it is one of the most important decisions you will ever make.